call our meeting to order. First up, we're looking for approval of the agenda, and the road department has requested that we pull item number N, which is the Blackman Local Roads Agreement. There's still some minor details they want to work on, so we're pulling that from the agenda. And with that, we need a motion to approve the remainder. Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Public comments? Public, feel free to step up to the mic. You have 3 minutes to address the board. Just give us your name. We'd like to know who you are, Daniel. Yeah.
You already did?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, seeing no public comment, reluctant or otherwise, we'll move on. Committee items, the minutes from the February 11th meeting, looking for approval. Motion and support to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. First up is the front of the court semi-annual report. Is Sarah here? Anybody from the front of the court? Why don't we move on to the youth center semi-annual report? We can come back to that if we get front of the court here. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Chuck Baker. I'm the new Youth Center Director. Those of you that don't know me, wanted to give you a little bit of an update on some of the changes we've had within our leadership team at the Youth Center. You not hear me? Back in October 2018, then Youth Center Director Jeremy Burns accepted a position with the District Court. Also in October 2018, longtime Supervisor Mike Jones accepted a position with Juvenile Probation here in Jackson as a probation officer, and I was promoted from Assistant Director at the Youth Center to Youth Center Director back in November 2018. Andrea Quaystad was hired as a shift supervisor in January 2019, and then Tuan Worthy was promoted from a shift supervisor to Assistant Director in February 2019. So we've had quite a bit of turnover within our management and leadership team at the Youth Center, but we're excited about the direction that we're headed in. Next, we have some stats that we had from 2018. The Youth Center had a total of 286 admissions into our secure detention program. You see there we have a breakdown of some of those demographics. We had 213 male intakes, 73 female, and then 161 of those intakes were Caucasian, 75 African American, 41 biracial, 5 other, and 4 Hispanics. The Youth Center staff engaged in over 3,200 hours of treatment or training in 2018. Some of the examples of the training that we did included human trafficking, first aid, CPR, AED, bloodborne pathogens, youth mental health first aid, cognitive and developmental disabilities, drug summit, sexual harassment, working together with respect, adverse child experiences, which gives us some indicators of childhood trauma that our kids have sustained, supervision and leadership, serve safe and restraint training and necessary use of force. Near the end of 2018, the Youth Center began a relationship with a company called Time Clock Plus to update our old punch-in time clock and upgrade that to a digital time clock card reader type of login. We expect that new time clock, advanced scheduler software, and mobile app to significantly modernize the way that Youth Center employees access their schedules, submit and receive time off requests, and also we expect it to help significantly with our payroll and timesheet submitting. As a 3-shift operation, that's just a very time-consuming and cumbersome process for us. We entered on March 4th, we started a pilot program with that where we're doing both the old paper way of doing our timesheets as well as both the Time Clock Plus way as well. So our first payroll is coming up with that, so that'll be very telling as to how that's going for us. Over the last several months, the team of Youth Center staff have focused on implementing reading and literacy improvement changes within our residents. We've implemented a number of strategies to motivate and support youth in their efforts to become better readers. Those include implemented an incentivized reading program, implemented a Word of the Week program to improve their vocabulary, and collaborated with the Jackson District Library to have them come in during one of our visitations with our families to have both families and kids sign up for library cards. And we purchased a software program for our school program so that they can use computers within the classrooms and monitor kids as they're doing things on their computers in the classrooms. The Youth Center also continues our partnership with the Youth Arts Alliance program in 2019. This will mark the third year of our urban gardening project that we'll be doing with our treatment kids. The kids have learned a lot in that program and are really looking forward to getting back involved with the gardening program. The Youth Arts Alliance program is also going to be doing creative arts and writing workshops with our detention residents that will culminate in the creation of a book that we've published to show off all of their work. So, that's my report. Are there any questions?
Chuck, I've just got one. Your numbers for 18 on admissions, how do they compare to 17, if you know? Up or down?
I think we were up just a few. I think 2017 I have here somewhere.
And if you want to get back with us, that'd be fine too, if you don't have them right there handy.
We were 283 in 17, so
283
up
total.
just a few.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions of Chuck?
I just have just a couple.
Darius?
And my question is kind of on the same line. Is there any of these, the numbers that you just reported, that's 238, I think you said just now?
They're 283.
283, I'm sorry. Coffee hasn't kicked in yet. Are any of those returnees?
Yes, some of them would be. I didn't hash out how many of those would be returnees, but I could certainly look into that data for you.
Okay. Well, is it maybe 5%, 10%, just round figure?
I would guess it's a relatively small percent. We do have a small percentage of what we call frequent flyers that may come back repeatedly, but most of our kids are kind of first-timers.
Okay. And then with the youth that come into, or that I guess are getting ready to transition out, is there any programming or anything that you do to help the kids kind of get acclimated back into regular society? And I use that term loosely. But.
We certainly do with our residential kids that spend a longer period of time with us. We have a whole transitional aftercare program that helps with their transition out. With the kids in our detention program, we work collaboratively with the probation department, and basically the probation department does that follow-up piece and works with the kids more out in the community once they're released.
Okay. And then with the youth that come in as well, are any of these due to lack of placement in foster care at all?
No.
Okay.
We're not legally allowed to accept kids that they have to have a criminal offense in order to be placed with us.
Okay.
So it certainly wouldn't be only due to that. We do have some kids that may overlap with the foster care system, but there has to be a juvenile delinquent charge in order for them to be lodged with us.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other committee member questions? Daniel?
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the report. I just have a couple of quick questions. The first question is, well, one, just a comment. Thank you guys for doing a youth mental health first aid training. I'm curious if there are any other mental health supports offered for the children while they're.
Yes, that training is actually offered by Lifeways, and so a
Okay.
number of our staff have attended that training. We've had a number of trainings that have been brought in. We've focused a lot on trauma over the last couple of years and trying to get our staff more educated on trauma and the effects of trauma and how it impacts kids, while they're in our custody. We've also focused a lot on developmental disabilities, cognitive disabilities, because we're just seeing an increase in not just kids with mental health issues, but more developmental pervasive disabilities that they're struggling with. So we've done a lot of training around those subjects.
Okay, thank you. And then I was also just curious, I'm not sure if you would be the person to ask or if maybe this would be a question better for the prosecutor, but we heard a story from DHS about a person who was released from the youth center, but parents didn't want them to come home, so then that young man went into foster care of some sort because his parents didn't want him to come home. I'm just curious if in that situation, if the parent would be charged with anything, or does it depend on how old that kid is when they're re-released from your facility?
I couldn't speak to what they might be charged with. I guess that would be a more appropriate question for the prosecutor's office. I can tell you that matter is referred to DHS, and there is some follow-up and intervention through DHS. What impact that might have on the family, and I don't know.
And then last question would be, I think that the garden program that you do is great. I'm just curious if you guys are looking for any volunteers to help with that.
We have a master gardener from MSU Extension that's volunteered some time to come in and do that program. I could check with her and see if there's some additional help that she's looking for. In the years past, she's kind of had it under control, but if there's an opportunity to add somebody, that might be something she'd be interested in.
All right, right on.
All right?
Who does? Okay, Mike?
Yeah.
Chuck, one more question here for Mike.
You know, I mean, I've been so impressed with the program over the years here. You know, I mean, these kids come here, and for those who haven't had opportunity to tour that, you really should get out there and take a look. You know, the program, it makes a difference in these young people. Over the course of the weeks and months that they're there, you can see it. It's self-evident. And again, my concern is, and I think I've heard it by others, is what happens afterward. Because they're there for a reason. They're in our system for a reason, and those things usually don't just happen overnight, you know, one bad decision. It's usually leads up to that, you know, multiple decisions, which comes from parents, friends, neighbors, whatever. What are we, if anything, doing to try to change their environment? So when we hear they thrive with us, we have them reading, eating 3 meals a day, and, you know, having some self-respect for themselves and so forth.
Right.
But then we return them to the same environment.
Right.
What can we do?
Well, while we have those kids in custody as well, we do provide some parental interventions. We offer parenting classes, we offer family counseling where the family is invited in to engage in the same counseling along with the kid. Unfortunately, we know that as adults, we tend to be a little bit more difficult to change than kids might be, so we do tend to see a little bit more change amongst the kids, but we certainly try to provide interventions for the family as a whole as well. Sure.
Bill?
Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning.
Is there any way to gauge a success rate here? I know success may be reflected 2 or 5 years down the road even, but are we truly making a difference for some of them?
I absolutely believe that we are. It depends how you define success, I guess, is a big part of that. Are we looking for kids to be successful, productive members of society? Are we looking for them to be employed? Are we looking for them to just be crime-free? And those are all different variations of what success might be. We do track recidivism. I didn't bring those recidivism data with me today, but we do track that with our treatment program, and I'd like to say that that's pretty effective. However, I think a lot of times with the kids, we're sowing seeds, and some of these kids aren't going to have the maturity to really make and understand those changes for a few years down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess success would really be all 3 things you mentioned.
Right.
Non-recidivism, not spending time in jail or getting into more serious problems. And
Right.
I'd take a real serious tracking effort, I would suppose, but I like to hope we're reaching some, at least.
Right. And it's tough, too, because you have so many of these kids that grow up and move away from the Jackson community, and so it's really tough to follow up and see what they're doing 5 years post-treatment, and
I just wondered if you had a feel for it. Thank you.
absolutely.
Commissioners, we all set? Thank you, Chuck. Next up, we have the 2018 Jackson County Planning Commission Annual Report. Grant? Morning.
Good morning, everyone. Grant Bauman, I staff the Jackson County Planning Commission. The Michigan Planning Enabling Act requires that a annual report be submitted every year. I think that we normally do this covered under our semi-annual reports for the entire Region 2 Planning Commission, but I thought it was appropriate to do the standalone report and provide it to you. Last year, Commissioner Williams was the board representative on the County Planning Commission. Amy Guerrero was the chair, and there were 7 other Jackson County citizens that served on the committee, on the commission. There were 31 cases that were reviewed by the County Planning Commission on amendments to township zoning ordinances. 58% of those were rezoning requests, but 42% were text amendments, which covered various issues, including medical marijuana, solar and wind energy, agricultural tourism, large gatherings, mixed uses, the administration of the zoning ordinance, and slaughterhouses. So quite a variety of cases. Another duty of the County Planning Commission is to review municipal master plans that are proposed in local communities. And we looked at two of them, one in Henrietta Township and one in Rives Township last year. And then we also are charged with reviewing and making recommendations on farmland and open space preservation agreements that are administered through the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, or MDARD. And we looked at 5 of those in Pulaski, Columbia, Concord, and Henrietta Townships. A long-term project that we're starting to work on is an update to the county master plan, and the county administrator requested that I provide you with an update on that as well. We began working on that in earnest this year. So far, demographic information on the county was gathered and summarized using population estimates from the Census Bureau's American Community Survey. Work also began on the creation of various maps that depict the Jackson County. We looked at, so far, maps have been created for municipalities and places, topography, several maps on the various water resources, a couple of maps on the different soil types that are within the county, several maps on transportation facilities, road, railroad, and air, existing land use using the property assessments countywide, and also major community facilities. We'll continue to develop those maps and refine them and develop accompanying text. And then once that data has been developed and refined, we will put together an outline for the master plan proper, and a schedule for its completion will be developed. I thought that it would be also appropriate at this time to just briefly go over the state mandated process for updating a master plan. The first step is to send out a notice of intent to prepare a master plan, and that was done last week. Basically, it's a letter that goes out to all of the municipalities that are adjacent to the county, all adjacent counties, and any known utilities, transportation agencies, that type of thing, so that they're aware that we're working on it and that they'll have an opportunity to comment on what is produced prior to the plan officially being adopted. Once a full draft of the master plan is created by the Planning Commission, it would then be sent to the county board for its review and release for public comment. At that same time, the county can announce its intent to adopt the master plan by resolution, in addition to the County Planning Commission adopting it, which is the only requirement of the state legislation. At that point in time, all of the notified entities that received that initial notice of intent to plan have 63 days to review the draft plan and to provide comments back to the County Planning Commission. At the conclusion of that review period, the County Planning Commission can hold a public hearing and then adopt the master plan. If the county board has elected to adopt the master plan, it can also do so after its adoption by the County Planning Commission, and staff does recommend adoption of the master plan by the county board because that makes it the policy of the entire county rather than just the policy of the County Planning Commission. I'd be happy to answer any questions. That was up in Parma Township. They had a call for, they must have had a possible slaughterhouse that wanted to come in. According to state legislation, we have to, municipalities have to allow for all uses to occur within their zoning jurisdiction, and if it's not covered in by the zoning ordinance, then it would have to come in unregulated. So they were just, I believe, being proactive because they had someone interested in doing that. Proactive in making sure that there could be some regulation of it. Because, again, according to the Michigan Zoning and Enabling Act, you have to allow for all uses within your zoning jurisdiction. You can't just say we're not going to have slaughterhouses, just like you can't say we can't have adult entertainment. You have to allow for that within your ordinance.
Could you forward me any of the text relative to that? I'm interested in.
Sure, I can do that.
I would
happy to
also
do that.
encourage take a look at the law on that, because what Grant's basically saying, because it comes up a lot with SOBs, sexually oriented business zoning, and the law is such that, it is wise for any and all townships to draft ordinance zoning where they decide where those businesses can be located within their community, because if they do not, well, then they could put the slaughterhouse across from your house in an ag zone. Yeah. Well, the next thing is a metal plating facility or a hog farm or whatever. That's the problem without zoning. I've seen people in the past. I saw some signs one time driving through the countryside, said no zoning here. I looked at my wife and I said, wow, that's a $300,000 house right there. Yeah, I wonder if the owner's really prepared for that. What may be across the street. Most people aren't. That's why we have zoning laws. But if they don't regulate it, it's open.
So Grant, why don't you forward the information to Mike, both what Mike's talking about in the legislation and what Tony's asking for, the text of that. Get it to Mike if you would, and then he can distribute it to everybody here.
Okay.
Darius, did you have a question as well?
My question actually was just answered, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions? If not, thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
Next up is the Airport MDOT Aeronautics Sponsor Contract for the design of the terminal apron rehabilitation. Juan, good morning.
Morning. Okay, this is a sponsored contract with MDOT, which operates the Federal Airport Improvement Program for the FAA. And this contract is for the design portion of a $3 million project, which is going to be the rehab of the terminal apron on the airport. The total cost for this contract is $190,000, with the local share being $9,500. And this is the first part of the $3 million project that we I recommend we approve that. Any questions on the contract itself?
So Juan, we're still in the position of having to only contribute 5% from local, and then I think the state does 5%. Is that accurate?
That's correct. The prior projects were actually 2.5% local and 2.5% state. That changed several years ago, so it's now 5%.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions of the proposal? Phil?
This is for the design of the renovation itself. So they had to go in and take core samples. The apron has been in place since 1962, and so we needed to go in there and determine what was underneath the concrete and determine if there's any type of contamination. And then they actually had to design the ramp. We have various types of aircraft coming in, and so the farthest part of the concrete apron, which is farthest away from the terminal building, it's going to be 9 inches thick, and that will gradually come down to 4 inches closest to the building. So, $3 million, 3.2. Yes.
And wanted to be clear on this, it's a $190,000 contract, of which our share is $9,500, correct?
Correct. And if we recall back in October, the commission approved the contract that was between the county and the consultant, Mead and Hunt, for the full amount, $190,000. So the county was responsible for the full amount until now. Now we're only responsible for the local share.
Okay, if no other questions, we need a motion to send it to the full board.
So move.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. One, the airport semi-annual report.
Okay, the numbers for 2018 were pretty good. We're still 100% occupied with all the county-owned hangars. And we had strong operations and fuel sales finish in 2018. So we were up from the 2017 numbers. We've also experienced an increase in corporate aviation, which is the type of aircraft that we want coming into the airport. What brings the revenue to the community is the jets that are coming in, and they're bringing in the CEOs to do business in town. And we've seen an uptick in that type of operation at the airport from previous years. From the last item that is left from the commonly known the runway safety project is the update to the airport layout plan, or the master plan for the airport. The ALP is expected to be completed sometime this year. We're about 3 to 5 months behind right now, primarily because the data points that had to be gathered all over the airport. This is going to be an e-ALP, an electronic ALP. So we had a company come in and take GPS data points of every single structure on the airport. Every runway light had to be taken a data point. Every runway end coordinate had to be put in. All the signs, all the buildings, they all had to have GPS coordinates and elevations for this new type of ALP. And so that's taken a little bit longer than what we had planned. The big project for 2019 is the terminal apron reconstruction. And I put in this diagram to show that everything that is green is pretty much new pavement on the airport. It's the oldest runway, which is the crosswind runway, 1432, that was built in 2009. The main runway was completed in 2017. The rest of the pavement on the airport is where the condition of the pavement is less than optimal. The worst pavements are in the terminal apron and the old taxiway Foxtrot, which is no longer used. The pavements are measuring what's known as the Pavement Condition Index, and the PCI for the terminal apron is anywhere around 20%, 17 to 24%. Anything less than 10% is a failure of the pavement, and that's where you start getting gravel and potholes and chunks of concrete coming up, which is not optimal for aircraft operations. If you take in one of those chunks of concrete in a jet engine, you're buying a $2 million jet engine. So that's why we want to rehab, and that's why the FAA has made this a priority for the airport. Here's some of the photos of the terminal apron, and you can see the types of cracks that we have, and basically the pavement is about 2 years from failure. We get a lot of spider cracking, there's water going through, and we're going to start seeing smaller sinkholes, potholes. The actual project itself is divided into two segments, with the center of the terminal apron is the dividing point between Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 will be the west side of the ramp, and Phase 2 will be the east side. This will allow us to continue operations on the airport without minimal interruptions. The one major interruption will be the fuel sales. There will be no self-serve fuel. We're trying to negotiate with the local FBO or the local airport business to see if we can get a decreased fuel price for the local operators. Otherwise, they end up paying between 20 and 40 cents more per gallon when they do not use self-serve. The federal project, the Airport Improvement Program, is it's planned and is in the state of Michigan, is carried out by MDOT for the FAA. The 10-year plan for the airport, and this is primarily for the new commissioners. We have 10-year planning meetings, and this determines how we're going to utilize federal funds to maintain the airport primarily. And in our 10-year plan, it's going to be primarily pavement. So at the end of this next 10 years, every single pavement on the airport, with the exception of the parking lot, will be brand new or close to brand new. So this will be a real tremendous advantage for the airport. For the particular project that we're doing this summer, most of the funds come from the discretionary pot of money that the FAA has. And the way the FAA determines how projects are handled or are funded is they give the block grant states like Michigan a chunk of money, and then the local FAA office has discretionary funds. And we've been really lucky in Jackson County that the local FAA and the county have really great relationships, and we continue to benefit from that. And for this particular project, we are competing with 97 other airports in the state, and we've been lucky enough to be selected again for getting discretionary funds. And not only are we competing with the smaller GA airports, but we're competing with the larger airports like Grand Rapids and Lansing and Flint. As I mentioned before, the local share for the complete rehab project is $156,000. The actual contract that was just approved to go to the full commission was for a portion of that, and the full project will be a $3.2 million project. So what's coming up on the horizon? There's a world shortage of pilots, and in the United States alone, we are training 28 less pilots per day than what we need in the industry. So we're really hurting for pilots, and we're trying to figure out locally what can we do to resolve that issue. In the last 6 months, we've trained 4 pilots in Jackson County through either the flying club or the flight school. So we've been talking to Jackson College and see how can we ramp up the operations so we can start having the community benefit from a great career of being a pilot. Nowadays, a kid that's graduating high school can be on the right seat of an airliner within 5 years, making close to $100,000. And it's a career that is expensive to get into, and that's the big challenge for us is how can we get more people interested in aviation, and how can we fund the career for them so they can start being pilots. The latest from the FAA on the drones and the driverless or the pilotless airplanes is that it's not going to be something that's going to be seen in the next 20 years. Right now, the majority of the passengers in the airlines do not want to fly in an airliner without a pilot on board,
Bill, do you have a question?
obviously. Yes, sir. Yeah, the standard career path used to be either you went through the military and you had your, right now it's a 12-year commitment in the military if you're going to be a pilot in the military. So you got to stay in the military for 12 years. Or you went through college, you went through a Western, North Dakota University, Eastern University, and it cost about $100,000 to get started as a pilot, and then you spend a couple of years as a flight instructor. The industry right now is so badly in need of pilots that they no longer require a bachelor's degree. Back in the day, when I was living in the military, to be competitive, you needed to have a master's degree and your flying experience and your licenses to be hired by the airlines. Now, if you're a high school graduate with 1,000 hours of flight time, you can be hired by the airlines, and they will hire you by the airlines. So the challenge is, how do we get a high school student that is not able to finance a 4-year, or doesn't have the time to finance a college education and the flight training? how do we get them into the cockpit? And that's what we're working with Jackson College. There's a federal regulation, Part 141, that allows students who go through Jackson College to get loans, student loans. And that's basically what we're trying to get the college back into, is to, they used to have a 141 certificate, and that has been gone for about 7 years. And so if we can get that back in, then somebody that's a junior in a high school can actually start going to Jackson College. They can start flight training, and they can get a loan for the flight training part of it. Yes.
Juan, I've just got a couple of questions. If we can go back to slide number 2 for a second. It had the numbers, and it shows 41,202 aircraft operations. Is that takeoffs and landings?
That is correct.
Okay. And do we know what the number was last year?
It was
Well, year before.
it was about 39,000.
39,000, okay. And you had mentioned about a lot of corporate landings now bringing executives in. Is there any way to break those numbers down from year to year or not, or is it too difficult?
I can probably break them down for 2018 and possibly 2017. Case in point, this morning we have a jet coming in from Wisconsin, from Madison, Wisconsin, probably to talk to people at Blaines, Farm and Fleet, and we have a jet coming in from Detroit Metro to pick up an executive to go on a flight. And so that's typically, we're experiencing our morning rush hours and our afternoon rush hours where people are either coming in to conduct business at Jackson or they're leaving Jackson to conduct business at other places, and then they come back in the afternoon.
I like to see the numbers from year to year, number one, and number two, I think for the public that knows how much money we put into the airport, it's good for them to see those numbers on corporate, so they know it's not just recreational aircraft coming in and out of there. So if you can get us those numbers, that'd be great.
Yes, sir.
And then the same thing on gallons of fuel sold, I assume that's up with more takeoffs and landings, or?
That is correct. I mean, the reason why the numbers were down for years is historically the main user of the airport were the smaller general aviation aircraft. And as that population retires or passes on, they're not being replaced by new pilots that want to fly for fun. That population is being replaced by the small business owners that can use the aircraft for their business, or the corporate aircraft. And so the corporate aircraft obviously use much more fuel. Instead of buying 25, 30 gallons at a time, the local business is selling 100, 200 gallons at a time.
Good. Okay. Commissioners, any other questions for Juan? Darius?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I have just maybe one question, or two questions, excuse me, for the, on your presentation on slide 8, just talking a little bit about the discretionary funds. Now, just so that I understand this correctly, the funds that we would receive, those funds will be used on the apron repair, is that correct?
That is correct, yes. The way the sponsor contract works is we make our payment, our local share payment directly to MDOT.
Mm-hmm.
And MDOT receives the funds from the FAA, and they distribute the funds directly to the contractors. So we don't see any of the $3.2 million. It's all handled by MDOT.
I see, okay. Now with this, okay, so that would answer all my questions, and thank you, appreciate it. Also, too, I want to mention this as well. I haven't had the opportunity to make it out to the airport to meet you as of yet. I've been slowly trying to make my rounds and meeting everyone. However, I have had some conversations with some individuals, and they're very impressed with some of the ideas and things that you have planned coming down the road, and just some things that you've done thus far. So, and so they've kind of shared their ideas and thoughts with me as well. And so I'm just thankful and appreciative that we have you with us. I think you're going to be a great asset to Jackson County, and if there's any way that I can stand by you and work with you to help get some things done, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you.
Next up, we have J.C. Dot, who's huddling in the corner, partially huddling in the corner, with the emulsion contract. I A dog whistle?
Morning, Commissioners. This one is pretty straightforward. Let me pull it up here. It's an annual bid award for our emulsion. It was jointly bid with Calhoun, and I think you have all the information in front of you. There is one item in the bid tab that Michigan Paving was slightly more on, but the predominant pricing that they offered was much lower on all the other categories. So are there any other questions?
Commissioners, any questions? And if not, we're looking to send this on to the full board for approval of Michigan Paving as primary and Caltech as backup, I think. Correct, Chris?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Phil?
Michigan Paving have the capability to keep up with your needs, bar some unforeseen problem? I know we need a backup, but they're going to be our main go-to, and they can take care of us?
They can, yes. That's been verified as part of our review, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, if no more questions, looking for a motion to send it on to the full board.
Support?
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Chris, J.C. Blackman Local Road Plan Number 1.
Yes, we're excited to bring forward the first project for Blackman Township as part of their new road millage. We're also pleased to report that the bid is almost 11% lower than our engineer's estimate. We did anticipate some inflation in bid prices this year, but we received very favorable bids from Michigan Paving, and we're happy to recommend award.
Okay, this as well goes to the full board. If there are no questions, we'd be looking for a motion.
So moved.
Okay, motion and support. Tony, do you have a question?
And this part is to provide 3.77 miles of local road.
Correct.
They approved to improve all of the local roads. When are the other hundreds of miles going to be done?
Chris, if I can interject, Tony, if you look at the agenda, we've got a couple of different plans here for Summit as well. They're doing them in stages, and I'm a little familiar with that area. It's one whole large neighborhood, probably one of the largest neighborhoods they have in Blackman.
That's correct.
So they'll continue to bring plans to us for different areas versus trying to do everything all at once in one plan, if you didn't mind my interjecting.
We're planning to do it over the next 3 years, actually. The whole township of Blackman is slated for completion in 2022. So this is the first year, the first phase is here. We're going light this year on purpose because we're very busy in Summit and Spring Arbor finishing those up. And we've had discussions with Blackman Township about the details. So phases 2, 3, 4, and 5, if necessary, will be happening over the next 3 years.
Thank you.
Motion and support. Any other questions? No. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Chris, Spring Arbor Local Plan Number 3.
Yes, happy to report. I think this is our final project for Spring Arbor. Is that correct, Angie?
We have Chapel left next year.
Oh, yes. We have Chapel left next year. But this is pretty much the bow tie on most of Spring Arbor's roads. This is their third year of their 3-year plan. And again, similar to Blackman, we're happy to report a 22% lower than engineer's estimate bid from Michigan Paving once again.
Okay, again, if there's no questions, a motion's in order to send it to the full board.
So move. Support.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. And
If I could add one comment to this one, I want to give kudos to our engineering team. They've landed this plane gently, right on time and on budget. It's complicated to do, in their case, $12 million a road and come in on budget, and remarkably they have. So just wanted to share that.
We're appreciative too, Chris.
Thank you.
Phil, did you want to make a comment?
Chris, we had originally thought that the prices for materials could be inflationary because everybody wanted them. We're not finding that out, apparently.
We are, we are. They're rising dramatically. What we're doing here is we're giving extremely flexible timelines for the projects so that they can keep prices low. If we'd put in strict deadlines, then we would expect much higher prices, to be honest. And we bid early. Obviously, we're here in March presenting the award.
Early and flexible is the key to getting a
Correct.
reduced price.
That's right. And we've been talking with contractors about what they need and balancing what we need. And then, of course, communicating with the townships to make sure they're aware of that. So
Awesome
that
job.
we can.
Thank you.
Chris, I think it's also noteworthy to mention it's Michigan Paving getting most of these by being the low bidder, plus they're local, correct?
That's
And they're
correct.
substantially cheaper on the ones that we're seeing here.
That's correct. Last year, you remember Reith Riley had Summit's work. Michigan Paving had Spring Arbor's work. So this year, we're seeing Michigan Paving bidding very aggressively for all the work.
Chris, the Summit Local Road Plan C.
Okay, this bid is 13.66% lower than our engineer's estimate, and a similar story to the other projects you're seeing. A lot of work has gone into this. I know that it's just being presented in extremely brief summary to you, but I just want you to know there's a lot of homework done behind the scenes to make sure we get successful bids like this.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions on this one? And if not, again, a motion's in order to send it to the full board.
Support.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Chris, Summit Local Road Plan E. What happened to D?
Stands for Central and East.
I'm just kind of being humorous. Go ahead, Chris.
Really, same story. In this case, if I've got the right one in front of me, yes, 16% lower than our engineer's estimate. Again, to your point, we were expecting a little bit higher pricing, but because we're early and very flexible, we're seeing some nice savings. And again, similar to Spring Arbor, the plane is geared for landing next year on time and on budget with a $32 million project overall at Summit. So we're very pleased with the performance of our engineering team and our cooperation with contractors thus far.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions on Summit Local Road Plan E, 3E? If not, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Chris, the road certification book.
You see this presented every year at this time. There are no changes to report from last year, but nevertheless, we do need to have a signature from the chairman of the board, and we submit both the urban and the other certification annually by March 31st.
Okay, if no questions, a motion's in order to send it to the full board to authorize the board chair to sign.
So moved. Support.
Motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. N is off the agenda. We're down to P, the hot mix asphalt.
Okay. There is a typo in your staff report. It's 1.6 million total. There's an extra zero in the dollar amount in the prescribed motion. I apologize for that. But we're very happy with these bid prices. This is asphalt that we pick up and we place, whether it's through our patching program that is beginning aggressively here very soon as the weather breaks, using hot mix material as soon as we possibly can, but also our paver patching program where our crews are out capping off various troubled areas of road. So I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Commissioners, any questions for Chris? And if not, with a correction to make it 1.6 million,
That's
motion
correct. Yes.
to send it to the full board.
So move.
Motion and support. Chris, I have the figure right, correct? 1.6 million.
1.6 million, correct.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Down to Q, monthly report.
Thank you. Our monthly report is full of all kinds of news about the various road improvements and maintenance that we're embarking on this year. Happy to take any questions you might have on those. I also just want to highlight that the Green Road issue that you've seen in the last couple of months and also last fall, we are expecting, we have a letter from Waterloo Township requesting some considerations, and that is going to be presented at full board next week, is my understanding. We had submitted it for discussion here, but I think it's in the best interest that it go to full board. The other matter is that we met with them last week and discussed some of those issues, and we really feel that it's for your consideration, some of their requests. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions for Chris's report or anything else that you've got? You've overwhelmed us, Chris. No questions.
I apologize. We're extremely busy, so
It's a good thing.
we distilled it down as best we could.
Chris, the Moon Lake Road Bridge project is going well. I see in here they're driving piles for it, looks like, but that's moving along.
Yes, as scheduled, and we're excited that the arches are under construction at the factory. So we'll be seeing those hopefully here in the next month or two for installation, and you know things are really moving when that happens.
And I see that you've got note of Airport Road in O'Neill. You're still looking at that. Hopefully they can find some of the simple things to do that we've talked about without having to change roadways or anything. And Northwest Schools Lansing Ave signal, I'm glad to see that you've still got that on your radar.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Angie would like to highlight something. It's some very good news, or I'm asking her to highlight this. Her team was very successful at getting us $500,000 roughly, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Angie.
So we did get some of the safety grants. I think we've talked many times here at the podium about safety grants or high-risk rural roads. And we did get notice that we were awarded or will be getting the 4 grants there that are on there. So 2 of them are tree clearing, which is a normal maintenance item that we do, but we'll get funding for it, so it won't come out of our general budget. And then the other one, we have a quadrant of our local roads will get edge white painting with safety grants. So the roads that have never had edge white painting, we got a grant to pay to do that. And then we have some dual stop sign and stop aheads with some flashing beacons that will be installed on 18 intersections. So our team worked very hard to get those submitted, and we were very happy to hear that we got 4 of them. So kudos to my team.
Appreciate seeing that. Means more money to the roads, right?
Absolutely, it does. We do chase every grant dollar we can find, so this is 80-20 money. We'll have a 20% match, but it does relieve our budget quite a bit.
Chairman
Thanks.
Shotwell.
Christopher, I want to thank your staff for a wonderful year last year, and congratulations to your staff also and your team running the new recycling unit and the recognition you received for that. I've had the privilege of talking to some of the line workers about it, and they have really enjoyed working with the new machinery and also enjoy the challenges being put forward for this next year. And they're looking forward to meeting those goals. So yeah, it looks like a good program. Now we need is the weather to break so we can get out from under weight restrictions.
Thank you very much. The team is looking forward to that. We have some additional brush-up, refresher training coming up here this month. We're excited for the weather to break. And things like our tanks, and frankly, this year is going to be amazing because over the winter, we've received the last of our equipment that we've been waiting for, cement spreader truck and water trucks and so forth. So we're finally going to, I think, get out of the gate with the full efficiencies that we've been looking for. The last project last year, Matthews, turned out to be one of the most successful for us. We did almost a mile in maybe 7 hours, down and back. The whole road was finished and ready, and we were able to put on the 2 inches of asphalt. So, thank you. Thank you for your support on that, by the way. If you haven't seen the Roads and Bridges magazine, it's in Mike's office, and we're trying to get extra copies for you all, so stay tuned.
If I may just make another comment there. And for those who are not familiar with road building, I mean, you got to get out there and see this. it is amazing
Yeah.
it's amazing to me that they can do a mile of road, both lanes, there and back, in 7 hours in a day, and people can drive on it. You guys know how the orange barrels go. They go up and sometimes they just sit there for days for anything happens, let alone, they can turn it over so quick. I mean, that's the big difference for me right there. Thank you.
Well, not to belabor the point, but more impressive to me is how long I think the roads will last building them that way.
Right.
I mean, it's nice that we can be on them quickly, but just being out there and seeing it go down and see how thick it is, got high hopes for it, so.
And we are very pleased with how it's performed over the winter. Our weak link right now, frankly, is asphalt. And I'm not blaming asphalt industry here. I'm just saying that the formulation of the hot mix asphalt that we cap our base with is the weakest point. It's some of the mix designs that we use are struggling to handle the cold temperatures, so it's thermal expansion contraction that can sometimes cause cracking. We've seen a couple cracks, and we've determined through our research already and assessment that it's based on the thermal issues. We had that extreme cold here, a month ago now, the polar vortex. So we're tweaking the mix. We're switching things up a little bit. We're also researching some pretty exciting things with using recycled waste plastics and so forth to enhance the strength of that hot mix asphalt on the top layer. So stay tuned. Innovations are continuing.
Bill?
Christopher, when you do a mile of road, you're really doing 2 linear miles.
Correct.
So I think you're understating the success. I mean, we're doing 2 miles of pavement. Is that a formula how to talk about what you did? Is that industry, or why don't you tell the linear miles you did? It sounds so, wow.
Well, I like your approach. With your permission, we can do that.
I mean, you really are. You're doing 2 linear miles
Right.
in 7 hours. That's
Right.
even more impressive.
When we say lane miles, that's exactly what we mean.
Okay.
1 lane and then another lane. So, yes,
Thank you.
great point. So that'd mean that this year we're going to do 100 lane miles. That sounds better, doesn't it?
Yes.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, Angie corrected me. It's a 10% match on the safety grant, so it's 90% funding from outside sources. So we're excited about that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I do have just one question.
Absolutely, Darius, go ahead.
And I know this is determined based on the weather, but I'm just looking at the numbers for salt and things that we've used thus far. Now, is this up or down from last year?
Thank you for asking. We're actually pulling a report that digs into the history.
Okay.
I'm asking my team to go back 20 years. That's going to take some time to get all that data. Without the heavy-duty snow like we have seen in winters past, the irony to our winters today is we're using a lot more salt than ever before. When you get that 20 to 30 degrees, especially around 30 degrees with rain involved and so forth, we find ourselves repetitively salting, and so we do use more material. That's just necessary to keep the roads safe in our community. So we may be saving on plowing the heavy snow and the overtime for that, but on the flip, we're still sending trucks out and treating the roads for icy conditions, if that makes sense. And I would put our performance on that in the top 1 or 2 in the state, to be honest. I think our team has a lot of pride. We're very responsive. We try to get out earlier than most counties. So we're doing very well. We're looking for a way to measure that so that you too can brag about our performance there in case people are complaining.
Sure.
So.
And I had a chance to go out and take a tour and look around at the facility there, and so I was very impressed with our ingenuity of things that I didn't know that we had there. So I was very impressed by that. And also, too, just wanted to mention that I had a conversation with some individuals in another county, actually in another state, just looking at some of the things that they do with some of their roads, and just so I just took mental note of that conversation and came back and looked at what we're doing versus what they're doing, and I'm just very impressed of the forward thinking and ingenuity that we have compared to some of our neighbors. So I think that, again, as I've said before, I'm very pleased with what you've done thus far, and I'm really looking forward to what we can do in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are looking at pursuing credentialing from the American Public Works Association. Just as a side note to what you're saying here, I expect it to be a smooth process, given a lot of the best practices we've already implemented. But we want to be the best that we can be. So if there are ways we can improve, we have a seminar in-house for our team on March 18th, and we've invited the city, we've invited the villages, we've even invited other counties from the region to come and learn with us about what APWA looks for when they certify a department like ours as following best practices in the industry. So we'd be one of only 3 or 4 in the state of Michigan. But I think it's about a year-long process. We're going to learn all the details, but we're excited to hang our hat on that award if we can as well. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that completes the main part of the agenda, takes us down to claims. Looking to pay the claims. Motion and support, please be sure to sign it. I think they made their way around. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Other minutes, there were none. April reporting schedule, I didn't see anything there. And takes us down to public comments again. Feel free to step up. You have 2 minutes to address the board. Just give us your name, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. Matt Kuschel from Fahey Schultz. Our firm represents Waterloo Township, and I'm just here on the Green Road issue. I understand it didn't come before you on your agenda, but I just wanted to give you kind of a preview of what we're talking about, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. So just to highlight the unique nature of this road, we're not opposed to this project, and we're not opposed to Aggregate Industries. Obviously, they operate in our township, and we're happy to have them. But this road, this project is going to actually remove a road from the township. It's going to be completely gone because it's going to be mined out. It's also not just a regular local thoroughfare. It's actually a natural beauty road. So again, that brings some unique characteristics to this particular road. And then, of course, it's part of or within the Waterloo recreation area. And so again, that's a unique situation, the location of the road and the ability of the funding that's coming out of it to then just what our citizens want and what the township is kind of representing here on their behalf is that in this unique situation that this road with all those factors, the funding should come back to the township, still go through your road department, still be used on roads, and just to assist the township as well. And if you have any questions in your comments, I'm happy to address them. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment? Public comment is closed. Committee member comment? Hearing none, we're adjourned.